We often think that after a certain age, big changes are no longer for us. Moving, starting something new, or even shifting the rhythm of our days can feel too heavy, almost unreasonable. At 82, many people will tell you, why bother? Just stay where you are. But the truth is, the heart never stops searching for peace, and the spirit never loses its longing for a place where it feels at home. Aging doesn't mean closing doors. It means opening them more carefully, with gentleness and awareness. What feels frightening about change at this stage of life is not the change itself, but the idea that we may not have the strength to adapt. And yet, strength has many forms. It is not just the firmness of the body, but also the quiet endurance of the soul. You've carried decades of experience, joys, and losses inside you. That kind of strength is far greater than we often admit to ourselves. There is a freedom in realizing that what worked for you when you were 40 may not suit you anymore. And that's not failure, it's wisdom. Life in the city, with its endless rush, noise, and crowdedness, may have served you once. It gave you purpose, work, maybe even adventure. But there comes a moment when the constant hum begins to weigh on the heart. The countryside, in its quiet and simplicity, offers something that our bodies and minds deeply recognize: a slower rhythm, the space to breathe, the sound of birds instead of traffic. Does that mean it's the right choice for everyone? Not necessarily, but for some, it becomes the beginning of a softer chapter, where the worries of survival give way to the joy of simply being. I often say that courage at 80 looks different than courage at 20. At 20, courage might be traveling the world or chasing a new career. At 80, courage might be allowing yourself to follow your heart toward peace, even if others don't understand. It's easy to dismiss this kind of decision as impractical, but perhaps the most practical thing we can do in our later years is to choose peace over pressure. When you think about your own days, ask yourself gently, where do you feel most at ease? Is it surrounded by the buzz of the city, or in the quiet presence of trees and open sky? Do you notice your body softening when you imagine silence, or does it long for the familiar closeness of urban life? These questions are not meant to push you in one direction or another. They are invitations to listen to your own wisdom, the wisdom you've earned simply by living this long. Change at this age is not about running away. It's about turning toward what nourishes you most deeply. If you had to choose a place where you would like to spend your peaceful moments, where would it be? In the busy streets or in the gentle countryside? Share your thoughts in the comments and let others know where your heart feels most at home. The city has its rhythm, fast, demanding, sometimes overwhelming. But the countryside whispers a slower pace, one that the body often greets with relief, even if the mind takes time to adjust. I remember Maria, a woman of 79, who once told me about her first months after leaving the city. She had lived in a small apartment on a busy street where the noise of buses and late-night conversations outside her window never seemed to end. When she finally moved to a little village, she thought peace would come immediately. Instead, she found herself unable to sleep. The silence felt too wide, the nights too long, and she worried she had made a mistake. But slowly, as she began to take short evening walks before bed, listening to the crickets and watching the fading light, something shifted. Her body remembered an older rhythm, one that matched the rise and fall of the sun. Within weeks, her sleep became deeper than it had been in years. Sometimes the body needs time to catch up with the spirit's choices. You may notice this in your own days. Aging brings with it changes in how we rest, eat, and move. What once felt energizing may now leave you restless, and what once seemed too simple might now feel like nourishment. The countryside has a way of inviting us back into balance, but only if we accept its invitation gently. One of the most powerful yet simple things you can do is to spend 10 minutes outside in the morning. Stand on your porch, open the window wide, or walk a few steps into the garden if you have one. Let the light reach your eyes, not through glass, but directly. This small act tells your body, it is morning. It is time to begin. In the evening, instead of filling the last hour before bed with screens or restless tasks, give yourself permission to look outward. Watch the sky change, sit with a cup of tea, or simply rest in the quiet. These are not grand instructions, they are gentle adjustments. And over time, they guide the body into harmony with the natural world around you. If you find yourself unsure how to begin, start with one small ritual. Perhaps it's placing a chair by a window where the sun touches your face in the morning. Or perhaps it's exchanging just 1/2 hour of television for the sound of the night outside. These shifts may feel small, almost too small to matter, but they create a foundation. As Maria learned, peace rarely comes all at once. It arrives in little pieces, almost unnoticed, until one day you realize you are breathing more easily. And maybe ask yourself, where in your day does your body long for stillness? Where does it crave a rhythm that feels less forced? The answers are already within you, waiting for you to listen. If these gentle ideas resonate with you, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next steps in building a calmer, healthier life. Sometimes just a reminder at the right time can help you make space for the peace you already deserve. As the years pass, the body begins to whisper truths it never had to say aloud before. What once felt effortless, digestion after a heavy meal, walking quickly without noticing, sleeping through the night, now requires more patience and gentleness. This is not weakness, it is simply biology. Our metabolism slows, meaning food stays longer in the stomach, sometimes leaving us heavy or restless. Circulation changes, and with it our tolerance for cold or long periods of sitting. Even the way our brain processes stimulation shifts, so that silence and fresh air can become more nourishing than they ever were in youth. Science has long shown that moderate movement, especially in natural surroundings, supports not only the heart but also the mind. When you walk among trees or sit by a field, your nervous system gently calms. Cortisol, the stress hormone, drops. The blood flows more smoothly, carrying oxygen to places that ache or feel tired. It is not about grand exercise routines anymore. It is about choosing movements that feel like kindness rather than punishment. A slow walk, a bit of stretching by an open window, or tending to plants can do more for your health at 80 than hours at the gym ever could. There is a myth that country life demands great physical strength, that it is only for those who can chop wood or dig the soil for hours. But that is not the truth. The countryside offers a wide space for small actions. You don't need to lift heavy things to belong there. You need only to let the land remind you of balance. Even sitting outside with a cup of tea, breathing air touched by leaves and earth, nourishes your body in ways a busy street cannot. Do not measure your worth by the size of your efforts. Instead, notice how your body responds when you give it simple, natural care. Sometimes the most powerful medicine is stillness. Sometimes it is the rhythm of a short daily walk. Sometimes it is the laughter of a neighbor carried on the wind. If you pause for a moment and remember, when was the last time your body truly softened in silence? Was it while resting under a tree, or perhaps while listening to the sound of rain on a roof? These are not minor experiences. They are signals from within showing you what kind of environment allows you to thrive. Aging does not close the door to well-being. It simply asks you to find it in different ways. You no longer need to prove your strength. Instead, you are invited to embrace the gentler forms of vitality, the ones that arise from listening to your own body and trusting the wisdom it has gathered over so many years. One of the most overlooked truths about creating peace in later life is that comfort rarely happens by accident. It is something we gently prepare for ourselves step by step. When you move into a new environment, especially a quieter one like the countryside, the smallest details can decide whether your days feel light or heavy. Think of it as weaving a soft blanket. Each thread may seem small, but together they create warmth and security. Begin with the things you touch and use every day. Keep your most important items, your glasses, your favorite book, your medication, within easy reach. It may sound obvious, but how often do we leave ourselves struggling to bend, stretch, or search? This is not about making life smaller, it is about making life smoother, so your energy can be spent on joy rather than unnecessary effort. Next, consider creating what I like to call a comfort corner. A chair placed where sunlight falls in the morning, a blanket draped over the back, perhaps a small table with a lamp or a plant. This becomes a place where you can pause, breathe, and simply exist without needing to do more. As we age, rest stops within our own home become essential, not indulgent. They remind us that slowing down is not laziness, but wisdom. Another step that brings surprising peace is planning your routines in advance, especially those connected to food and supplies. In the countryside, shops may not be just around the corner. By arranging a regular grocery delivery or scheduling one clear day for errands, you release yourself from the stress of constant planning. Your body and mind settle when they know there is enough in the cupboard and that tomorrow's meals are already cared for. And then there is the question of connection. Silence is beautiful, but loneliness can quietly grow in it if we are not attentive. Setting a gentle routine of one call a week with family or a friend, or even a short conversation with a neighbor, keeps your heart from closing in on itself. Human contact, even in small doses, is as nourishing as food. These steps may seem simple, but their power lies in consistency. They are not about reshaping your whole life overnight. They are about building a softer framework around your days so you feel supported rather than strained. Ask yourself, where in your home do you feel most at ease? Could you make that space even kinder to yourself? What task still feels heavier than it needs to be, and how might you lighten it? Change in later life is not about chasing something grand. It is about creating the conditions for pace to visit you daily. And when your environment supports you, your spirit finds more space to breathe. You know, much of life is spent in motion, working, striving, keeping up with the noise and demands of the world. And yet, as the years gather, the heart begins to whisper something different. It no longer asks for speed, it longs for stillness. Moving to the countryside in later years is not about stepping away from life, but about stepping closer to its essence. The quiet fields, the rhythm of the seasons, the unhurried mornings, they remind us of something we may have forgotten in the busyness of earlier decades, that peace itself is a form of strength. I have spoken with many who found that when they allowed themselves to slow down, they didn't lose vitality, they found it in new forms. One man told me that after years of rushing from one task to another, he discovered more joy in watering his plants each morning than he ever had in meetings or deadlines. Another woman confessed that baking bread once a week became not just a task, but a meditation, a way to feel grounded and alive. These small acts, often dismissed as ordinary, carry extraordinary weight when we finally allow ourselves to feel them fully. And perhaps this is the true gift of aging, the permission to choose what nourishes us without apology. In the countryside, even the simplest routines, watching the sky change, noticing the sound of leaves in the wind, sitting quietly with a warm cup, become gentle teachers. They show us that peace does not come from doing more, but from being present with less. This doesn't mean every day will be free of worry or pain. Life never grants that. But it does mean that within each day, you can find a place of calm, a moment of softness, if you choose to honor it. Allow yourself rest without guilt. Allow yourself to savor a task slowly instead of rushing to complete it. Allow yourself to say, "This is enough." Because at this stage, enough is not only sufficient, it is sacred. You don't have to chase new horizons to live fully. Sometimes the deepest fulfillment comes from finally standing still. And so I invite you to reflect gently. What small change, even the tiniest, would bring you more peace right now? Perhaps it's as simple as moving your favorite chair near a window, or stepping outside for 5 minutes at dusk, or planting something in a pot by your door. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be grand to be meaningful. If you've been thinking about a change, trust that it is never too late. The wisdom you carry has already prepared you for it. Share your thoughts in the comments. What is one piece of wisdom you've learned in your later years that you wish you had known earlier? Your words may be exactly what another soul needs to hear.